Welcome to the Mike Lead Aspire session today. We have a fun guest, and I'm going to let her introduce herself here shortly. But if you're out there and you're watching this on the internet, please like and subscribe to our channel. Make sure that you are interacting. We have a lot of great content out there as we've been doing this for years. This is fun. Our last recorded session for the year. We have a holiday one coming up before Thanksgiving, but this is our last recorded session. So Manisha's bringing up the rear, and that's okay because it's going to be great. And look forward to talking to you guys. I'm sorry, look forward to talking to you. But like I said, you guys out there, like and subscribe. If you have questions, I am monitoring the Q&A as well, but we're just going to jump into it and get it started. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Manisha.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mary. I'm so excited to be here. So I have been in cybersecurity now for a very long time, 18 plus years, and today I'm the Deputy CISO of McAfee. So my role really expands around product security, security and privacy architecture, AI/ML security, cloud security, vulnerability management, what have you. But I really, when I started my career, I think back in 2006, I actually was not, I never got a degree in cybersecurity. There wasn't a degree when I went to college that was a cybersecurity degree. I got in, I did an undergrad in management information systems and marketing. And then I decided to stay at the university I was with, and I did my MBA in operations management. So I had this one project I recall in my grad year where I did a consulting gig with a local hospital. Obviously, it wasn't paid, but it was part of part of one of the credits that I was taking. And I just felt like consulting was the route for me. And fortunately, I went into it. Again, it wasn't cybersecurity, it was all process improvement strategy. And I went into supply chain. What happened was essentially the supply chain department got dissolved in 3 months. And they pretty much said, we have three people in the cybersecurity team. We need people. Do you guys want to learn it? And they pretty much lifted and shifted all of us into cyber. Not really much of an option, but honestly, like it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I just really fell in love with it. And it's been a long journey to come up to here, and very happy to share more about what brought me to this point.
No, absolutely. And we'll get into, I was having a random conversation with someone in the UPS store as I was printing out my information about the centralization. We were talking about the outage. We were talking about the AWS. So we might touch on that a little bit, but I don't want to derail the conversation. But okay, so you got started management information systems. Your first was a consulting gig. You went into cybersecurity. What was the first area of cybersecurity did you go into?
So it's interesting, right? Because I think when you're a new hire and you don't really have any experience in cybersecurity, I got put right
Mhm,
into the audit function, because it's very
mhm,
structured and it was IT
mhm,
audits, cybersecurity audits, very structured program plan because it's all compliance focused. Being, if you're familiar with the space, like ISO reviews, NIST reviews, and once you get a handle on the basics, you start to do more interesting gigs. Again, consulting, right? You pretty much get pulled into policy development, strategy. You would do gap assessments, and my actual focus area at that point was financial services. So I spent about 10 years in financial services and got really good visibility into, really large banks, top five banks, mid-tier, hedge funds, investments. So it was really, very wide breadth of experience. And I think that's the benefit also when you're relatively new to the space, you're trying to understand what to do. I got a
mhm,
lot of opportunity to explore having
mhm,
joined consulting versus industry, pros and cons. Because I think,
mhm.
now that I'm in industry, it's a different ballgame. It's not, like now I can be pretty critical of consulting where, you come up with a strategy, you're like, here you go, and off you go to your next gig. It's not, it's obviously not so simple implementing everything and fixing stuff.
Mhm.
So, definitely pros and cons, but I think the learning, there's nothing that I feel like could have surpassed that learning opportunity for like 15 years in consulting and just getting engaged with
Mhm.
so many different industries. So
Mhm.
one of the
Yeah,
really,
you're the second. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was like, one of the really cool things I did there, though, was, I got really focused on one or two particular areas. So privacy became like a huge focal point for me when GDPR came out, like 2014, 2015,
Hmm.
like the implementation
Hmm.
of it. So that to me was kind of a turning point, because you can do all the basics in cyber, but once you get good at something, to specialize, I felt really mattered to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're the second guest in a row that started their path with the consulting or going down the consulting path. And so, of course, these are individuals that are looking to get into the space. And, cybersecurity does a very poor job at advertising all the things that we actually do, right? You said they got rid of the third party team, and it's like, okay, but that's third party risk is cybersecurity tangentially, right? And
Yep.
so it becomes there's not any role out there that you can have that doesn't touch on cybersecurity, mainly because all the data resides in somebody on somebody's computer. And
Yep.
so now you have to do that. But in understanding that, and new professionals that are coming out into the space, completely like, okay, well, what do I want to do? Consulting is one of those ways that you can, break into the field. If you're, I didn't go into consulting because I had two kids. I wasn't going to do the travel thing. It
It was a
just,
lot of
it just
travel, for sure. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's like it's like a prereq. So, yep.
so but you get the different flavors, right? You kind of sort of get to dabble into different things, so you get exposed to different things. And you mentioned audit as well, and having that mental state. Like when we're teaching about cybersecurity, I tell them the people that know what's the most important to an organization reside in audit because they're going to be looking at it all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
So
And,
if
and
you're
I think there's a good reason people are afraid of auditors, right? So you get very thorough, you get very detail oriented, you get into the mindset of very deeply structured reviews. And that goes a long way when you start to work in an ambiguous environment, right? Where that structure doesn't exist. So if you started in that ambiguity and you figured it out, that's amazing. That's phenomenal. But I think like that structure helps a great deal to help convey very complex ideas, convey why I took this approach to solve this ambiguous problem. And let me tell you how it's going to matter when the regulator comes in or when an independent consultant comes in and looks at our environment. So I felt like that set a really strong foundation for a lot of the different roles I've had up till today.
Mhm. Yeah, and go into that a little bit because again, I just told you before we got on a recording that my law degree was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Uh, just because you have to be detail oriented and all this other things, and for it's a blessing and a curse because then being detail oriented, you can't let stuff just go sometimes.
Yes,
but
that's true.
but you mentioned that background and having that understanding, um even with the non-technical aspect. So as a leader, because you're a deputy CISO, right? And so what year did you transfer from just consulting individual contributor to people leadership, and how did that go?
So, it's funny. It took me a while. I spent a long time in consulting, and when you're so junior in your career, you kind of have this mindset like there are these top tier consulting firms, and I want to be able to get to that, and then, really see why is it so different. And I think I navigated a bit of that into three or four different consulting orgs. I was at BCG for a little while, and I became head of global privacy at Protiviti. And the one thing I took away is that the profession is similar, doesn't matter which organization you go to, like delivery might matter, how you sell things matter, right? I think strategy matters, not all the services are quite the same, but from a cybersecurity standpoint, the output, like if you're getting a NIST cybersecurity assessment or a gap analysis, like the foundation is kind of the same. The expectation and the output is the same. It kind of becomes a relationship-based decision, cost-based decision, familiarity, right? So when I was with Protiviti, I had this really awesome client, big tech sector, and I became one of their primary assessors because they had an FTC consent order. And I had a previous boss that
Okay,
worked
wait a
at
minute.
AWS. Yeah.
Hold on. Let's explain to them what a FTC consent order is. These are brand new
Oh,
professionals.
yeah.
I know what it is.
So it's essentially, it could be any regulatory body, but essentially they pretty much said this technology company had certain deficiencies in how they were managing customer data, employee data, what have you, and that became um, evident to them as a regulatory body where they had to come in to do an investigation and then come up with a remediation plan. And that
Mhm.
remediation plan meant they had to essentially prove to them that they were being compliant, and that required them to also get an external consultancy to help them do that at a very expensive price. Trying to explain
so,
as simply as possible.
okay. So hold that, put a pin in that. So basically, what that means, people, is that when you get in trouble with the Federal Trade Commission about their lack of controls of cybersecurity or privacy, they come in and they start to regulate you, and
Correct.
they sit with you and they tell you you're going to have to do it this way, and I need to see everything that you're going to do. So it becomes a hand holding. You become a quasi federal entity because they're with you, because they want to ensure going forward that things change. So I was under a consent decree at one point in my career as well. So
That
I
is not
just
something I wish on anyone. I will just tell you that. It is not, yeah. And I think this is also one of the reasons why it really helps to have that like foundational audit background. You understand, like you dissect that problem and it's appreciated, right? So like I was able to look at that consent order, lay out a very detailed, efficient plan, like step by step, exactly what this company needed to do to meet
mhm,
expectations. And it
mhm,
very large global broad company, like 30 different business teams, right? All different use cases for data. So it's complex. It's not like a one and done situation. So having navigated that, one of my old bosses heard about what I was doing and he was like, no, you need to come here and help us get this in check. And so even though I never actually wanted to leave that role, I was very compelled and kind of,
the salary package was good enough for me to
yeah,
consider
I would
leaving.
say that's probably the right way to put it. But yeah, that I mean, I love being at AWS. It's a very interesting culture, very complex environment, very smart
Mhm,
people, and
mhm.
pretty much built out their privacy governance program, like 250 engineering teams. It was a lot of fun for me, but I think I'm also a person that just I love like odd culture, so I kind of thrive in that from a personal
Mhm,
level. I was also their
mhm,
HIPAA security officer, so for the folks who aren't listening, HIPAA is essentially the healthcare regulatory body, and they set their own guidance and expectations for the management of regulated workloads that manage your health information. So
mhm, mhm, mhm.
AWS has a lot of
So
that. Just
yeah,
yeah.
but we talked. We were trying to figure out when you made the transition to people leader and how that worked out.
Oh, for people leader.
Yeah, from
People.
yeah, because you were a consultant. You worked with the
Oh,
team.
yes, yes, yes.
And
Okay.
then now because you went to lead a team, and that's always a challenge for individual contributors to make that transition
Understood.
to people leadership. How did that go for you, and when did that happen in your career?
So that actually happened for me very early on because usually in consulting structure at that time, like now it might have changed, but in consulting, you usually start with the basics. You're part of a team. You don't just join as a manager, right? Unless you've got that requisite experience. But I spent about 3 to 5 years in that consultant role, like analyst, senior consultant, and what have you, right? So you get certain years of experience under your belt doing all types of reviews, all types of strategies, documentation, and implementation too, right? Like there were times where like a company's just like, no, please, like just leave her here with us for 6 months so we can actually implement something. So you gain all that experience, but while you're doing it, I think probably about years 3 to 5, I was actually coaching and training more junior people working with me. So I was already kind of doing that manager role. And the company I was with at the time, like you have to show that you have the manager skills before getting promoted to manager. So
Mhm,
that's what it
mhm,
took. It was
mhm,
probably 2 years where I was managing a team of like 2 to 3 people every site I went out to. And then when I
mhm,
got promoted to manager about around the 5 year mark, then I got, I think, 3 or 4 directs, like again, the people that I was already managing. So it became a
Right.
very easy transition from that standpoint.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, and how big is the team you're currently overseeing now?
The team I manage now is about, I'd say 24 people. 24
There you
people.
go. See,
Yeah.
look at that. Like, so, okay, so going all the way back, let's talk to the young folks out there that are listening. What advice would you give someone about how to enter into the space? It seems you're audit privacy on that end of the spectrum, which is still again cybersecurity. But you have individuals that feel like they need to go to a boot camp. I'm like, okay, stop. Yeah, I spend my life trying to deprogram professionals trying to get into space because everyone feels that they need to have be highly super technical and get technical. And it's like there are I my guess would be 25% of the roles out there in cybersecurity, you really need to be completely hands-on technical. The rest of it, that it is not necessary for you to be a coder. Right. That's what I tell them. And unless you're working for a product company, that can come in handy for organizations like, McAfee and Adobe and things like that. But what advice would you give someone starting out on where to look for that ideal first role?
So it's interesting because I know that when I had joined the industry in the early 2000s, there was always a requirement to have a college degree. And what I can tell you now is that requirement has really loosened. A lot of the best um, a lot of the best cybersecurity experts I know don't actually have a degree at all. These are folks that just ended up taking SOC analyst roles, very entry level. You start to manage incidents, triage, and then you work your way up from there. So there are a lot of entry points you can explore that don't have anything to do with having technical experience, right? Auditing is one, compliance. So a lot of what companies have to constantly do year over year is proof that they're meeting compliance expectations, whether it is to have a policy in place, to have the right controls in place for access management. And this is a matter of understanding the technology that is doing all of these things. And it has nothing to do with the coding. There are always going to be folks on your team that manage the tech stack that is actually being used to give you visibility. So I always tell people being really good at your job in cybersecurity really means having very strong visibility into everything that's happening in your environment. So the right tech stack matters, and the people who are able to look at that data and understand what to do to make your environment more secure is the critical part, right? So I think like honestly, I always tell people security is everyone's job. So if you get into any role, there's always a way to transition into cybersecurity as long as you're showing there's an interest to do it and networking. What I have found in my career is like regardless of where I am, if I'm interested in something and I can find the right person, that's always my kind of gateway to getting into that next step or next phase in my life. And I encourage that. Like so even if someone like honestly, my mentor, one of the strongest people I know in cyber, she is a musician. She got a degree in opera and she sang for a year and then transitioned into an entry level role as a security analyst because it didn't require any past experience. She worked her way up to being a partner at a major big four, consultancy.
Mhm.
And that's a great story. I love to tell new joiners, right? This is not a person who ever dreamt of being in cyber, but is literally my go-to person now when I have questions. So there's a lot of different
Yeah.
ways. It could be
No, yeah, that's important, and that STEAM component. I tell my daughter that all the time. I said, you're good in arts, but you're also good in science and math. I think there is a connection there to the
yes.
arts. That I believe music is just math. That's just Miss Mary's idea. But again, those entryways and those entry points into organizations, that's always something that we hear within the organizations that I own and manage, or is still trying to ensure that there is that proper way. We have our apprentices that, they're transitioning. Most of them are transitioning into the space. Some of them may have a degree in cybersecurity. They're just trying to find their way into the space. The industry doesn't make it easy, but neither does I always ask the folks that are transitioning. I say, where are you hunting? Because it becomes a matter of what you're looking for and the words that you put in the words that you put it into Indeed to figure out or whatever it is you're looking for. I said, understanding that a lot of roles are still information security, and actually that is, what I was cut my teeth on. I actually cut my teeth on when it was called information assurance, and there are organizations out there that still use different terminology for the same role, right? And so it's like, where do you hunt, where are you hunting for these opportunities? So giving them exposure and having these conversations with professionals like yourselves give them, and hopefully giving them, ideas on what it is that they should be looking for, and not just looking for SOC 1 analyst roles. Because I've
Yeah.
talked to several, um yeah, because I spend my life talking to about hiring and people like that. And they were like, oh, gone are the days that there are these tiers, L1, L2, L3, right? And my thought process goes back to a few years ago, when the SEC said that their SOC 1 analysts need to have business knowledge. And
Mm.
so now the market is asking junior professionals that don't know anything about business, really, especially if they're coming out of college, to have business knowledge. And it's
That's the
unfair.
hard. Yeah, that's like the roles right now that are saying like have like 5 years of AI ML experience, and it's like it's
Really.
a little new. So yeah, that's always going to be a challenge, I think, in the industry. But what I will tell you is that you know, having been hiring these types of roles and even new hire
Mhm.
roles, I tend to go with the person who I feel like has the most grit and desire to learn, and I don't always go with the most technical person. They have to just show
That's
the
good to know.
aptitude to learn. Because again, a lot of these skills you pick up on the job. You can get a degree, you can do as much training as you like, but until you're in it, you're in the weeds and you're understanding how to actually implement a change and collaborate with people and get things done the right way. It's almost like the behavioral stuff I feel can matter more. The skills can be learned.
Mhm.
I really
Mhm.
believe that. That's and
Mhm.
and I think there's also like this aspect of uh, it looks more complex than it is.
Mhm.
It's a lot of cyber can feel that way until you sit down and study a topic. So I always tell people, don't delay that. Like if there, because I'm very meticulous about this and I've been like this from the beginning, right? Like if there was something I didn't understand, I would just write things down, the acronyms, the concepts, and YouTube them. It's not 1 hour videos, right? They're like 5 minute clips. Like, what is this? Explain the difference between, TLS 1.1 and 1.2. You can forget these
Mhm.
concepts if you're very new in your career. So that's the one thing, like write things down on your phone, wherever, and every night just spend 20 minutes figuring this out because it's
Mhm.
compounded, right? Those
Mhm.
skills you learn, and that's a habit that you put into
Mhm.
place day over day. So yeah, for me, big time, it's behavioral aspect of stuff. Like I will take the time as a leader to coach someone, to train someone, send them tons of links and learn this. And honestly, my mentors have done that for me, right? Like
Mhm.
um, you don't just have the knowledge overnight. You have to be
Right.
thrown into the deep end a little bit and be forced to learn
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah, I mean, and it goes for anything, right? And I don't, and for those of you who haven't heard, I'm, going through the process of opening our own cybersecurity training center to do what Manisha was talking about, essentially giving people an opportunity to do the hands-on practical at the same time as they're learning concepts and things like that. I didn't know what it takes to have a school, but I can learn, right? I've been thrown into it for the past 23 days, learning and getting it up and getting up to speed on these things. And it's taking the same thing, concept, which is reading, writing, arithmetic. Those basic foundational things are there. And if you can read, if you can research, then you can learn. Right. And so I tell the students that all the time. It's like you can't just well, you can't fake it, right? Anybody that's been in the, I've been in this industry for 30 something years, right? Manisha's been in the industry for 20 something years. We know what the machines sound like. We know what, so don't think it sounds good to you. You go to ChatGPT or go to one of the, and you search an answer and you get an answer and it sounds really awesome. But we can tell if you're not, if you don't know what you're talking about, right? And it's just interesting, even the changes right now with the proliferation of AI and every AI this, AI that, AI. It's like, okay, AI maybe 2 years old. Are you gonna give your 3 year old, 2 year old the keys to the car right now? Or are you gonna wait till it matures, that it shows some level of responsibility? And so it's nothing wrong with using it as a partner to help you learn and understand, but it can't be the source of
That's
your knowledge, right? It can't be, you have to do the hard work.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely agreed. And it's like I use ChatGPT a lot as well, but it's really more to summarize concepts and ideas. I think it can be a good source to get you organized on what to learn. But to your point, I don't think it should be your only source to, you know,
Mhm.
absorb
Mhm.
that information.
Mhm.
One of the other things that I was fortunate to have the opportunity to explore is also the things that I don't want to do. And I think that's so important as a young person to ensure you figure that out early if you have
Mhm.
the privilege to do that, right?
Mhm.
And I remember when I was in high school, I think I was like any other kid, like you just don't know what you want to do in college, right? You kind of gravitate to like whether it's engineering or business school, like no one really knows unless you've been coached or mentored differently. And I was in the same boat. And I remember telling my dad I want to be a bookkeeper or an accountant, right? Like everyone wanted to get an accounting degree then, right? That was it. Like everyone wanted to be a CPA, and it just made sense. There was a
Mhm.
good comp package associated with it. And I was in my senior year of high school, and my dad's like, I don't think that's gonna be right for you. And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I mean, it just seems like everyone is getting pushed in that direction. He told me to go get a job, like doing tax returns. And I did. I went to a local accountant. I just walked into her office and I was like, I need to learn how to do tax returns. And she was like, I'll pay you minimum wage, which was
Mhm.
6.25 an hour back then. So and then she was like, I need a commitment though. Like she wouldn't give me the job. I mean, I was just a kid. I didn't know anything about
Mhm.
tax returns. She's like, I'm only
Mhm.
going to give you this job if you stay with me through tax season. And this was like September, right? So
Okay.
this was like a
Okay.
proper
So
commitment.
yeah.
And so I was
So
like,
September is easy. It's April. It's
right,
March.
right, exactly. And I was like, oh, of course. I was so convinced this was it. This was going to be my choice of career. And so I committed, and I am very much like the person, like if I commit to something, I will see it through. I think that's also just something that's stuck with me. Whether I like it or not, I will do it. I'll do what it takes to get it done. And so when I committed, she trained me, she coached me. Obviously I learned to do all kinds of tax returns and hated every minute of it. Just like worst. I mean, it was just the most boring thing. Like once you know how to do it, it's just a repetitive process, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but I told her like I was gonna stick through tax season, and I did, and it was like literally, I think it was like April 16th. I was like, thank you, and then off I went. So, yeah, I mean, I think that was like I knew right away that was not going to be my degree. So,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I just encourage like if people have the opportunity to before they make that plunge into getting a full 4-year degree in whatever choice you have, like try to explore it while you can, right? So to me,
Yeah.
like cyber is very diverse though. Like there are so many things that you can specialize in, and it's evolving. I think that's why it's such an interesting field to be in long term.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it is. It's not boring.
No,
And
no.
you can get into anything and dive into it, and as long as you have that, because I tell people I ran the SOC and for J&J, and I said the L1 role will get boring after about a year.
Right, right.
And so you have to go into it with a plan of how you are going to put these skills on top of each other to go to continue to matriculate in your career, because you can get burned out if you in certain areas and certain aspects of things. And so it's like, but keep your options open. Like you said, it's so broad. Look at, I tell my kids, I said, did your mother, I basic information systems. I became an attorney, a special agent for the FBI, then corporate executive, now entrepreneur 5 times over. So it's like whatever you want to do, as long as you figure it out. Everything has been in cybersecurity, but still,
Yeah.
it's
Agreed.
still looking at it from different aspects of things. But I wanted to switch up the conversation a little bit and talk about, as a minority leader, right? And I know we are in this weird place where we can't really talk about certain things based on what's going on in the world today. So if you don't feel comfortable answering the question, please feel free to say, Mary, no, I'm not going to answer that question. But as a woman and a minority leader in a male dominated field, I know I had my own challenges, and I know I've had challenges not only being seen as being technical. I was also not, I was too technical, and then I was not technical enough in the same week, by the way. And and so, I try to inform individuals in this space where I make the comment, external validation is dead, right? And so having someone else try to validate who you are and your existence is a fallacy. But getting back to you and your journey and your career journey, you know, what bubbles up in your mind as some of the unique challenges that you felt that you've had to go through in this space?
I think that aspect of being technical resonates with me, right? Because I think for most of my career, I did do coding in college, but I never made a profession out of it. And actually, my first year out of college, I did manual code reviews, and I just realized that's not what I wanted to do, right? I pivoted, and I was like, this is like, if I'm going to stay in cyber, that's not my path, right? I'm going to do something else. But I think for the most part of my career, like when I would look at the other people that were CISOs, I always imagined that they were very deeply technical. They were always coding, scripting, or doing something very complex. And it took a lot of conversations to realize that's not always the case. There are a lot of different CISOs out there. And I had good mentors who would actually tell me, and like, and having candid conversations, like, how do you ever get comfortable not knowing everything? If a CISO tells you, I know everything about every concept, it's just not true, right? Like a lot of this is being able to learn fast, knowing what you're not good at, and building the right team, right? Making sure you have the right talent on your team, and also just acknowledging, telling someone like, we don't know enough about this. We have to go back research and we'll come back to you, right? I don't think that was easy for me to say as a young woman. It took me some time to realize everyone felt this way, and this is not just this feeling that I have, right? And having those conversations with a lot of mentors of mine who are also CISOs, it did a great deal for me, to be quite honest, because
Mhm,
now I realize we're all kind of in the same boat. There
mhm,
isn't anyone who
mhm,
knows everything. There isn't anyone that's incredibly technical and perfect at all concepts. And there's a lot of systems out there who don't have coding experience. So I think
mhm,
again, it's one of those illusions that there's this idea that you have to be a certain type of person with the perfect set of skills to be successful at this job. And for me, it just required a lot of conversations. Validation was
mhm,
obviously a part of it, but I'm not so where I am now in my career. I don't get distracted by that as much as I
mhm,
used to when I was younger. But I can understand why that would be a concern for
mhm.
many young women.
Well, I mean, many, many, many moons ago, and our mutual friend, Mr. James Beeson, which I said is the best boss that I've ever had, and he is the reason we're sitting here today. As far as me owning minorities in cybersecurity, origin story is, it's out there. But
James is
it was
fantastic
a
also.
funniest conversation in
Yeah.
the world. I Now this was before Zoom. James hired me sight unseen. And first time I met him is the first day of work, and I come down to Dallas, and it great relationship, great. He was a great leader, and still is the epitome of what I would say I worked best for me, because he said somebody in the organization asked him a question about incident response, and he made this flippant remark like, "That's what I hired Mary for. I don't have to know." If you
Yes.
hire great talent, you don't have to know everything. And
Yeah.
that was one of the things that I took with me on my leadership journey, and how I build out my teams today and in the past. It's like I want the best and brightest and sharpest, so I don't have to know everything. I can't know everything. I can't. And so for those things, as a leader, I think for me it took I mean, for me to humble myself to understand that I, I I need to allow people to be their best, and me trying to micromanage their livelihoods and their lives about what they do or being, that was never going to work for me as a leader. It's like I need sharp people. I need you to do this because I guarantee you I have to as soon as something happens in the news, I'm going to have to go deal with that, the board and everybody else. And I'm not going to be able to deal with what's going on down here. So I need you to be able to let you expand your and broaden your leadership ability. And that was just something that I took from my relationship with James. It's like, just hire good people, and they're not a threat. It's,
Right.
you get, they make you stronger, right, in that regard. But like I said, on my journey, there's a lot of different things, as one of only in every role that I was in, of, woman of color, woman, whatever. It the challenges that were being faced, and even being visible and being seen, had some of those challenges. So I try to let the individuals know there will be challenges, but you have to build that, as you pointed out, network. You have to have, you've mentioned mentors a lot. You have to have it wherever you are, as far as being successful. You have to have people that have been there or going through, that you can actually talk to. So tell us about your relationships with your mentors, and why you feel like that's the best thing for you.
Oh man. Okay. So I will tell you probably two of the moments that had a really, I still like a very memorable impact for me. So when I was junior in my career, like, I wasn't even a manager yet, but I had started to specialize in privacy, data protection, DLP at that point. So we would go into, again, in consulting days, like, we would go and pitch certain ideas. We would end up signing, getting a contract together. And whenever I was in those meetings, I was always, usually the only woman and person of color there. I was very timid.
Mm.
I think I knew the topic really well, but I felt very uncomfortable, being vocal about it. So I'd always constantly kind of look for someone to validate that my opinion was correct before speaking. And I remember getting out of this meeting, which went fairly well, and we left, and I met with my mentor, Julie, and she's fantastic, Julie Bernard. And I remember her sitting me down. She's like, "Why are you so timid? You don't need to be that way. You know everything." And she's like, "You're actually the expert in that room." And she's like, "I don't have anything more to add than what you have just said." And I remember like thinking, oh, like, I wish someone had said that to me years ago, because it's for some reason, like, needing someone to tell you and validate that, you are capable of that just went a long way for me. Maybe it wouldn't have for a different person, but for me, it did wonders, right?
Mhm.
Um, Probably the second thing, and this happened with my boss at AWS. I remember, like, again, difficult environment, but you had to bring all these engineering teams with you on this journey to become compliant with lots of different, very technical topics, right? And you'd get
Mhm.
pushback. Like, every now and then, you'd get people escalating on you, like, "Why are we doing this?" I always had like a couple engineering teams like, "Well, escalating to my boss, like, Manisha's asking us to do this. We don't want to do it. Is there an alternative?" And then my boss was like, "Why don't you want to do it? Why don't you just listen to her?" Like, that was always his response. It's like, what is she saying that's wrong? And I loved that. I just loved it. because it was just
Mhm.
eventually they would stop going to him and they realized like if there's something that they can't figure out with me, then it warrants. But it was, people always trying to bypass thinking it's like,
Right.
this is not important enough. I'm like, no, it is. And,
Mhm.
no one else is going to tell you to do anything different. So, I think like those
And no,
times.
you can't have an exception. It has to get done.
Exactly, exactly. So I am still very close with those mentors in my life today and meet them regularly. And one of the things that I feel like we don't talk about enough in our field is also like these intergenerational friendships and relationships and
Mhm.
mentors, right? Because to
Mhm.
me, the mentors I have today, they're probably like 15 years older than me, but I meet them, I get together with their spouses, we have dinners, I keep in touch with them. But the reverse side of it, right? I also
Mhm.
have these younger people who are 10, 15 years younger than me. And I might not have known them for a long time, but they are also the people that I would say, like, I just went into this room and I gave a meeting. Like we just pitched something or we brought this big idea together. How did I do? Tell me what I
Mhm.
could have done differently. Right? You get a very
Mhm.
different response from the person. The person who is mentoring me is no longer in the room. They are not
Mhm.
there anymore now, right?
Mhm.
There's no
Right.
one there to give me that candid feedback. So I start to seek it from the folks that are more junior to me. So if you are
Mhm.
that junior person, know
Mhm.
that your opinion does matter. If someone asks you for that
Mhm.
feedback, you should feel very
Mhm.
comfortable and candid giving it back because guess what? Those are relationships I keep too. Like these are
Mhm.
these are people now that are friends. These are people that I mentor now. I meet them. I go to their weddings and their special occasions, and you maintain that
Mhm.
relationship through your whole career. So I think it's very important to have both. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Your board of directors needs to be
right.
intergenerational. Just the thought process is different, right? I mean, it's easier for me because I do spend so much time with younger generation folks, right? And so because I am training it, you know, just I give them my Gen X viewpoint on things, and they give me their YZA opinions on everything. And but it takes it's a two-way street, right? And I've been a mentor since I was in high school. So it comes naturally to me, and to be able to do that is important. So mind your network, mind your mentors, mind your relationships, learn to build those relationships, get out of the computer and go out and see people in real life.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's 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 a thing. So all right, so this is a question that I ask everybody. It's like, okay, so as it relates to your own personal journey, what's the most useful tool in your arsenal when you're climbing the corporate ladder?
The useful tool. I might share a few different things, right?
Okay.
I think communication is a huge aspect of being able to grow and elevate in your career, right? I think you could be the most technical person, the most competent person, but if you're not able to articulate risk to a senior audience, that is that makes your career journey, I think, harder. Like I just think in this role, you have to be able to articulate things that are impacting the business in a very clear way so people can understand. Like to explain technical concepts in very basic terms so everyone in the room can
Mm,
understand. Because we forget, having been in this industry for X amount of years, not everyone understands what MSPs are, not everyone understands what like the concept of MCP protocols and what have you. So it's very important to just be able to distill that to groups of people that will not have that cybersecurity context and background, right? And the other thing I think, which I which I strongly believe, and I think it can be hard to do when you're young and starting out in your career, don't put your ideas on a pedestal. I think sometimes when we get really good feedback early on, we get very like, oh, like I'm like a superstar at this. So don't be too quick to put your ideas on a pedestal. You've got to work them out. You've got to kind of pressure test them, right? Lots of different opinions and people. And the second thing, don't put people on a pedestal, right? I think it's very easy to get into this mode of gosh, this person is just so perfect and so intelligent. And, I just want to, it's very important to admire them. But I think it's also important, like, I think it helps to build relationships more naturally when you don't
Mhm.
idolize a certain person or career or position and see it for
Mhm.
what it is. So it's probably those
Mhm.
two things that have gone a long way for me to also just
Mhm.
stay, very neutral in
Mhm.
the choices I make and the decisions I make, and not tie them to an idea or a person or a position,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Mhm. No, it does. It does. And reading, writing, arithmetic, right? And
Yeah,
it still comes out. I don't know. It comes back to these concepts that we seem to be losing, right? With the advent of a lot of these technical tools, and again, using those tools, it's okay if you understand that it's just a tool, not a source of knowledge.
right,
But what I'm finding is, um, the lack of resiliency. Someone will put their ideas on a pedestal, right? And then they may knock it out the first time, but then when somebody tells you, no, that wasn't that good of an idea, it like destroys their perception of who they are, and it kind of messes with their confidence.
that's
And
right.
I see that, and it's like, okay, so understand that I call it the participation trophy generation. I do, I'm sorry, I said because gone are the days where you have a winner or a loser. That's a good thing, because it creates this ability to understand that you're not going to be good at everything, but you can get better. And what I
Right,
find at times is I spend a lot more time trying to instill that confidence that you will fail.
right.
But guess what? You learned how to walk by falling. You may not remember. You learn how to ride a bike by not learning how to ride a bike. I mean, by
Yeah.
falling.
It's
And
learning
so all
mindset,
of
learning mindset
right.
constantly, right? That's in this field, I failed a number of times. Like, everyone I know has messed up something. But it's not something to dwell on. It's not something like, oh, like this is it for me. It's I think it's just really important to, you know, it's very, very important to just get back up and say, I could have done this
Mhm,
differently, and this is what I would do next time, and get
mhm.
on with it in a way. And
Yeah,
you have to
yeah.
have that mindset of collaboration. Like, you've got to learn from other people and not take it personally. It will come with practice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm looking to see if there's any questions. There's no questions out there in the chat. There's no questions here locally that I see. Okay, so tell me. Okay, so you're deputy CISO, right? So that means you are looking to make that leap to CISO. Is that fair?
Eventually, it's funny, when I took this role, I actually had very little AppSec experience. And if you remember, when I mentioned my very first gig out in consulting when I joined it, like the cyber team, was all manual code reviews. So believe it or
Hmm.
not, like now, like product security is under my belt. So that I think, one of the good things that came out of this role is that I really went deep in product, which I didn't have a
Hmm.
huge skill set in before, right? And I was very honest
Hmm.
about that. Like, this is just one of those things I had to learn and thrown into the deep end. And now I'm very proud of where we are today, you know? But I think it's one of those things where eventually, but I'm still very much in learning mode right now. I'm really enjoying everything I do. And now, like, AI/ML is coming into like everything that in every company is like trying to figure this out. So, yeah, it's a really fun place for me right now.
Okay. Okay. So how do you feel about cloud centralization, given the outage that just occurred
So it's
at your.
again, I think supply chain, this goes all back to that whole supply chain concept. Like, resiliency is a huge aspect of it. Hopefully, I know a lot of companies that were impacted. We were not as impacted. We had, pretty good, structure in terms of resiliency for the most part. But I think, again, it
Mhm,
just comes back to how you are planning for these types of things. Like, it doesn't
mhm,
always mean that because you're using a giant cloud provider, it won't ever happen to you, right? It goes for all things in supply
No,
chain.
I was talking to, again, the owner of the UPS store because that's where I've spent my time this week. But he was just talking about how his business, small business, was impacted by the outage. And right, and so it may not be the major organizations or the big organizations that don't have a resiliency plan,
Right.
but it's like these smaller businesses that make up the backbone of our economy,
Yeah.
right? They're relying upon this service. They're not thinking about they hire AWS to
Right.
worry about resiliency. They don't have the back end infrastructure to do all of this. So my conversation as I was having it, I was like, centralization. We keep going back and forth in this industry, right? I remember on-prem. I remember the dangers of centralization of single point of failures. That's a concept in cybersecurity as well. And then it became, oh, we need to decentralize. And then the cloud comes along, and now we're centralizing again. And it's just interesting to me, and like I'm old enough to realize all of this stuff. And it's like we're repeating the same issues. It's just like, just because it's called the cloud doesn't mean it's not still a
That's
computer.
right.
It's
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was talking to someone else about this earlier this week. Even from the AI ML security standpoint, people are making a big deal about how complex it is, but honestly, it's the same foundational basics. Alerting, logging, monitoring, encryption, and tokenizing data, making sure that you have the right access controls. It's a different method through which you have to implement it, but the concepts and the requirements are all the same. So I think that's again, like in this industry, it's so important not to have this illusion that something is so very complex, because you have to dissect and understand, like, what are the foundations of cyber, and how do I
Mhm.
put those best practices into place? A lot of different use cases for it, but
It's
foundationally,
still the basics. The
still the
basics are
basics.
still the same.
It's still the
Access
basics.
control is still access control,
Correct.
regardless of where you control it. It's still called
Correct.
access control. Encryption is still encryption. So those basics aren't, don't change, as you pointed out. And when we go over our first year in the apprenticeship program, I know they get mad at me because I take them all the way back to the basics. I really
Mhm.
do. And it's like, these have stood the test of time. I said, and I can show you how, if you're talking about the cloud environment, how you go all the way back in, and it relates to on-prem. Right. It relates to all the stuff that you're doing, the concepts, the strategies, the foundations of information security have not changed since the
Yep.
inception. It's just technology moves very, very fast, and it takes a time for you to get understanding of it. But when I remember the cloud, and it becomes okay, well, cloud. But who's monitoring for anything going on in the cloud? So then, because on-prem, you talk about SIM technology, right? You talk about monitoring. I'm sorry, security and event management. I'm
Yep.
doing it too. Um, but now you do cloud, and it's like, but now you have to have a cloud access security broker, right?
Yeah.
Security is still so you still have to see what's
It's
going
just a
on.
different type of technology to manage the same thing. So it's actually easier now in the cloud. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, the newer generation that's coming in, they will probably be lucky if they ever understand, like, on-prem infrastructure now, with everything being in the cloud. So that's kind of a
Well, if you
blessing
keep
and a
having
curse.
outages, if we keep having outages, it might just flip back to on-prem. Like, forget it.
I hope.
Well, thank you so much, Manisha. This has been a great call. This has been a great time, and I appreciate you spending some time with us here on the Inspire session, and educating the world. And if you did not hear what she said, is when she hires for passion and education, not necessarily technical skills. I think that should be something that you star that, because that is something that I did when I was a hiring manager, and it's something that a lot of hiring managers do. It's like, I'm hiring for passion. I can teach you what you need to know, but if you don't have the motivation to learn, then that I can't do
Right.
anything with you in that regards. But I really do appreciate it. Hopefully you had a good time. I wasn't too lackadaisical in my craziness that I have going
I
on in
love
my
this.
life right
I
now.
love this. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
No, it's yeah, thank you so much. And we had a great time, everybody. For you, those that are in the call and those that are out there watching on YouTube, again, please like and subscribe. This is our last recorded session for 2025. We are doing a lot of revamping for 2026. I just launched, as I said before, launching the school. So there's going to be some changes being made, but if you are around, if you're listening, we're having our little holiday party. I believe it's the 14th. Um, yeah, what's today? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the 14th of November. Well, we don't record those sessions. Bring your favorite holiday beverage, and we'll just relax and have a community call. But thank you again for your time. Thank you guys out there for joining us on a Friday. If you're watching this on the restream, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next year. You guys have a great one. Thank you so much.